Welcome back to the Daily Dope. I'm your host and friendly commentator, Uncle Brand. Now I've been in this like thing where I pay attention to politicians for a long time, wishing that they would talk about marijuana, talk about cannabis, talk about medical marijuana, talk about our struggle, talk about people that are in need of medicine, talk about just every aspect of the war against marijuana and how it's just the worst shit. Just terrible, just totally un-American policy, totally ridiculous, this and that. Now, for most of my life, I've been seeing Democrats kind of hint about it, like they're the ones that are for the freedom and the liberty for you to put whatever it is that you want to put in your body, and they were also the ones that kind of gave little dog whistles to marijuana, like every time you turned around, like Bill Clinton. Oh, I didn't inhale. Like that's the kind of shit that I've been seeing my whole life. Like I fucking voted for Bill Clinton. I should have voted for the other guy, Ross Perot or whatever, whoever was. Like why did I vote for Bill Clinton? Because he gave me that dog whistle. He had that look in his eye. I don't know. It was disappointing when one of the first things he did was an action against marijuana, and then he signed the 1994 crime bill into law. And, the rest is history. But basically, Democrats have been lying to me my whole life on this issue. And after Jeff Sessions fucking burned the Cole memo at the stake, I didn't see I didn't see like a gang of Democrats come running after him. Incidentally, I haven't seen any Democrats that normally don't take a really strong position on cannabis. I haven't seen them ever. And Sessions rescinding the Cole memo didn't change that. They're not on our side, man. I'm not saying Republicans are. There's still quite a few Republicans that are just total prohibitionists that want to lock you up, and they got prison industrial complex buddies. They got big pharma buddies. They got big tobacco buddies, just like Jeff Sessions. But when it comes to outspoken politicians saying the right thing and saying the real thing and being unfiltered about it and not having their tongue tied by fucking corporate donors in any of those industries I just named earlier. Lobbyists basically stepping on their balls so that they don't say what you want them to say, especially if they represent you. My representatives, they're garbage when it comes to this issue, and they're Democrats. What do you know? So why am I saying all this shit? Here's another example of where partisanship doesn't seem to fucking really matter on this issue, all right? I've been lied to for my whole life about Democrats being the ones that are for you. They're with you. Now, no one lied to me when they said Republicans are the fucking enemy. That's the truth. And it still is, as Jeff Sessions is proving. I'm not going to call Donald Trump a flip-flopper yet, but I want to hear something from his ass at least, man. He tweets about fucking dick size and button shininess and shit. Like, come on, man. You've been seeing that around the campfire people are talking about weed, and your little bitch Sessions is out there fucking with everything there is to fuck with. When are you going to tweet something, Trump? Fucking never? All right. Well, I'm going to let this representative from Florida, Matt Gaetz, who is a Republican, not a Democrat, because I haven't seen too many Democrats come out full-throated yet, like Barbara Lee, and like Cory Booker. He's a senator. I'm talking about straight-up representatives. Where are they at? Well, they all had chances to give speeches, and of course, as always, a bunch of them just went home. Well, let's check this guy out. This happens to be probably the best floor speech for marijuana I think I've ever seen in all of political history, and it's a Republican. Now, I've heard Bernie Sanders do a floor speech about cannabis. I've heard a couple other people, and including Cory Booker. He didn't do a floor speech, but I heard his speech about it. And he said stuff on the floor, but this is beyond the pale. So we're gonna let this go.
I have met with hundreds of families in the state of Florida and throughout the country who've seen benefits from medical marijuana. This isn't a medical theory. It's not something that people are merely hopeful for. It has actually created a more meaningful quality of life in American families. Why wouldn't we be for that? Why don't we want to champion the opportunity for a parent to be able to hear their child speak for the first time? Why wouldn't we want to give a grandparent some respite who might be caring for a child that has compulsory and reflexive seizures? Why wouldn't we want to help a caretaker who might be caring for a parent of their own, suffering from Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or dementia, where we've seen improved research and growing opportunity for progress? The Attorney General's decision is a step backward, but it doesn't have to be, because the Trump administration can step forward and fulfill the promise that President Trump made on the campaign trail to respect the rights of states and to have a non-interference policy with medical marijuana. I've called on Treasury Secretary Mnuchin to issue guidance and instruction to financial institutions that they will not be prosecuted or harmed, or they will not face some adverse regulatory action if they continue to accept the deposits of medical marijuana companies. I am hopeful that Secretary Mnuchin has more foresight than we have seen from the Attorney General's office, and that he will provide this guidance. Mr. Speaker, I'd also ask that the President personally engage. I know the President. I know him to be a man of a huge heart who cares about people. Throughout the Trump family, there's a particular focus on caring for the vulnerable and children who have to deal with complex medical issues. I would hope that the President and that the members of administration would find it within their hearts to take action on this important priority. Let us not allow Attorney Jeff Sessions to limit progress in American families and in an industry that is growing, creating jobs and developing key innovations that can help people. Beyond dealing with this inartful rescinding of the Cole memo, there is broader medical marijuana reform that needs to happen. There is no excuse to maintain marijuana on the list of Schedule I drugs.
All right, I just kind of wanted to stop and break in here real quick. And so far, leading up to now, this speech is kind of it's kind of a break-in. He kind of didn't really say anything too over the top or anything that you wouldn't expect to hear from pretty much anybody that was for cannabis. Now, from here on out, though, you have to take into consideration this guy's a Republican. This is in Florida. Well, this isn't in Florida. Sorry. He has to run for re-election in Florida. So, and unfortunately, I've heard some people chime in about this guy. And one of the things I heard was some Democrat chatter about how this guy represents the part of Florida that's like Alabama or some shit. Now, first of all, that's a fucked up thing to say. I just don't... Oh, wait, that was Joyanne Reed from MSNBC. Joyanne Reed, fuck you, first of all. Just fuck you altogether. You're a piece of shit. You don't need to be chiming in and tweeting about shit like this. But I don't know what she was talking about with Gaetz. She has some other kind of beef with him, I guess. But, you know, and that's another thing Democrats do, is they basically write off the whole South. Like, it's just a bunch of racist white people, so they're never going to vote for, you know, people that, of diversity. because they're racist white people. You can't write the whole place off, though, man, because there's a lot of people out there that aren't racist white people, or just a lot of people out there that just want to like fucking vote for better policies than the Republicans are offering, for example. Like, a lot of people are for policies, not fucking, you know, quite frankly, like identity politics. So whatever Joyanne Reed said is bullshit. I don't care where you represent. If you're going to say stuff this powerful, it's going to be at a lot of risk, all right? And when you're saying the kind of things that this guy's about to say for the rest of this video, you can tell that the fucking donors haven't got to him yet. And I bet you they're on the horn right now trying to figure it out. But this guy is saying some real shit from here on out, and he's a fucking Republican. So he has to go get reelected by getting votes from old white people that vote for Republicans in Florida. All right. Last time I checked, even though the elderly community has fully embraced marijuana, and even though Republicans are for legalization on a 51% level, even those Republican older white dudes in Florida that this guy has to go get votes from, they're not, you know, even they don't like this rhetoric that he's about to spew. So this guy's very brave. Nothing he's about to say is in the Republican Party platform, but you're about to hear this guy light it up, and you're not going to hear a single Democrat. I don't think you're going to hear any Democrats say what this guy's about to say.
Marijuana reform that needs to happen. There's no excuse to maintain marijuana on the list of Schedule I drugs. Schedule I is reserved for those drugs that have no medical value, that can't help anyone, that should be subjected to the strictest scrutiny. Not even cocaine is a Schedule I drug. I don't even think that some of the drugs that are doing the most harm and causing the most deaths throughout the panoply of this opioid crisis are all Schedule I drugs. But marijuana is. It is indefensible, and it is indicative of a dogma, of a lie that the federal government has told to the American people for a generation. And think of the opportunity if we could come together and make some progress on this issue. Throughout the 115th Congress, we've had robust opportunities to debate about our discord and disagreement and to discuss issues where perhaps we won't be able to come together as Republicans and Democrats. But this should not be one of those issues. This isn't partisan. It's not even conservative or liberal. You just got to believe that the role of government isn't to hurt people who are trying to get better, or hurt people who are trying to help others who are trying to get better. We spend way too much time arresting people for marijuana in the first place. In the year 2015, 643,000 people were arrested for marijuana. That's one person every 49 seconds.
All right, this guy does, you know, when you're hearing his talking points, you might be thinking to yourself, oh, I've heard that before on the Congress floor, Brandon. What are you talking about? You don't know what you're talking about. There's all kinds of Democrats that have been spewing those talking points for decades. And, you know, you might have a point there, but the point that I want to make, again, if I didn't already, I don't know what I titled this video, so maybe it's the title of the fucking video. Nobody is going to line up all these talking points one after another and just nail it down. This guy does it, man. I never heard, I've been listening to politicians for quite some time. All the way back to Ron Paul, back when he used to make some pretty fiery speeches about cannabis on the floor. And I've heard them all since and before him and after him. I've heard them all. This guy, he just gives them all. This guy's like opening up The Emperor Wears No Clothes by Jack Hare and just kind of going through the chapter list and just reading some shit off. But I'm going to stop interrupting him, I hope. But I'm just, you know, trying to let you know, man, this is like all of the talking points. Not just, oh yeah, quit talking shit about Democrats. No, at best, Democrats are famous for grabbing just one issue out of the marijuana issue and making it their thing that they talk about. And a lot of times these days it's the, you know, the incarceration issue. the mass incarceration issue. A lot of Democrats are willing to talk about that. I'll give them credit for that. And that is, why the drug war is basically a war against black people, in my opinion. So it's got to go, man. The whole fucking drug war, not just marijuana, but the whole drug war. Meanwhile, I'm going to get back to Mr. Gaetz here and let him finish.
For a year. 574,000 of these arrests were for possession, not distribution or sale. 40% of all drug-related arrests are for marijuana possession. And this is particularly discriminatory. African Americans are more than 2.5 times more likely to be arrested for possession than whites. Marijuana is a $20 billion industry in this country. If we allow Attorney General Sessions to have his way, we'll drive that $20 billion into the black markets, into the hands of the money launderers and the cartels. And the consequence will be fewer solutions for patients. Marijuana has shown tremendous promise in the treatment of Alzheimer's to slow the protein deposits on the brain. For patients with AIDS and HIV, medical marijuana can stimulate appetite, slow muscle wasting syndrome. It can function as an anti-nausea medicine, as an analgesic, and it can reduce peripheral neuropathy. For arthritis patients, there can be a reduction in certain types of symptoms that could clear people's airways suffering from debilitating arthritis. For chronic pain, we've also seen very favorable results for the many millions of Americans dealing with chronic pain who right now are getting prescriptions for opioids. So many of the prescriptions written for opioids today in America causing deaths, taking away our children, our aunts and uncles, our parents, could be avoided if we weren't prescribing opioids in the first place and if we had a lower impact alternative like medical cannabis. People with cancer have been given new hope, not only that these symptoms can be relieved through medical cannabis, but that the actual growth of tumors can be slowed. There's really great research. It has been published by the British Journal of Pharmacology regarding the anti-tumor properties that medical cannabis can have. But unfortunately, that research has to be done in Israel and in Europe and in other places in the world. Because in this country, we continue to maintain the indefensible policy that no research can reasonably occur on medical cannabis. As a matter of fact, this very Attorney General and this very Department of Justice have frustrated reasonable efforts to make more medical cannabis available for research, to unlock cures for the American people, and to help American families. Mr. Speaker, may I inquire as to how much time I have remaining?
How much?
Forever, dude. Keep going.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll conclude with this. I wasn't always a believer in medical cannabis, but I met a girl in my district who was being told by her doctors that she was going to have to saw her brain in half to stop the seizures from firing across. Today, that little girl is a medical cannabis patient. She's traded surgeries for softball games. She's traded doctors for dancing lessons. And she brings hugs and hope and joy to our entire community. It's for her. It's for the millions of Americans benefiting from medical cannabis that I call upon this administration to stop the Attorney General from harming Americans through his repeal of the Cole Memo. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I thank my bipartisan group of colleagues who've joined me this evening, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the Chair declares the House in recess, subject to the call of the Chair.
Yeah, that room was pretty empty.
I have met with hundreds of families in the state of Florida and throughout the country who've seen benefits from medical marijuana.
I don't know. There's nothing to add to this. I already put my 2 cents in. In my opinion, and this is the short version because this is just the tail end of it, there's another half hour. Well, not really. There's about another 20 minutes worth of this speech. I gotta say that I'm glad that Jeff Sessions brought this issue to the forefront of our political discourse so that somebody like a Representative Matt Gaetz, who probably would have been mired in just complacency and mediocrity, he's been able to take this issue by the reins since he discovered medical marijuana, like he said at the end of the speech. He's been able to take this issue by the reins and ride up above the fray in politics, because it's this kind of issue here where it's not a bipartisan issue. Like he said, it's an issue of freedom and liberty. It should be an issue of every American that breathes air and says they're an American. Like, if you think that you're for freedom and liberty and you're for the cops kicking people's doors in for growing marijuana, there's just something wrong with you. But other than that, Matt Gaetz, best speech I've ever heard in Congress about marijuana. Really dangerous for a Republican to go out there like that. And that's all I got. Please subscribe if you like what you see here. We're going to be doing a lot more of it, because this shit's just the very begin. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I've made over 300 videos at this point, and this is just the beginning of what's to come. I mean, the ball's just getting down rolling, and it's going downhill, guys. And it's not just marijuana, and it's going to be worldwide. So stay tuned, subscribe, and hit the like button on your way out. Peace.
This isn't a medical theory.